It wasn't a press conference, a newspaper editorial, a think tank report, or a labor campaign ad. This political message didn't come from polished speeches or carefully crafted press releases. It came from the terraces, from ordinary people, from the packed stadiums across the country. It arrived with blunt force, stripped of filters and spin, in the form of one brutal chant, a four-letter word, the infamous C word roared by thousands and aimed squarely at one man, Keir Starmer. This wasn't just lad culture run wild, nor was it mere football banter or a crude joke. It was a cultural uprising, a raw, furious, unapologetic indictment of a man and a party that had claimed to stand for the working class, only to turn their backs the moment the cameras stopped rolling. If you're tired of the political games tearing Britain apart, now is the moment to rise up, subscribe now, and be part of a growing movement demanding truth, accountability, and real leadership. We really listen, and bring you the stories the mainstream media won't touch, because this is our country, and together we can take it back. Subscribe now, because when stadiums full of working-class Brits, many who once voted Labour without question, start chanting stars AC asterisk asterisk asterisk, it isn't for shock value. It's born from betrayal, from broken promises, from a leader who looks like a politician, talks like a bureaucrat, and governs like a spreadsheet, cold, detached, and utterly removed from the pain and reality of the very people he is meant to represent. Football fans don't chant about politicians out of boredom. They do it when they're angry, when they feel betrayed, when they know polite political language can't cut through the noise anymore. This is not a random outburst. It's deliberate, it's raw, and it's a powerful symbol of just how far Keir Starmer has fallen from the people he once claimed to stand for. Once hailed as a champion of the people, his leadership has proven to be more than just a disappointment. It feels like a quiet rebellion against the very values he once claimed to uphold. Starmer's rise was marketed as competent, measured, and mature, a steady hand after the turbulence of Brexit and the bitter factional battles under Corbyn. Many hoped he would return Labour to its roots, standing with the working man, the factory floor, the union hall, and the high street. Instead, we were handed a corporate automaton in a suit, a man who speaks in sterile press releases and has abandoned nearly every major policy pledge from his leadership campaign. From supporting nationalization to standing with striking workers, he has discarded it all. And people have noticed. They don't need policy briefings to recognize a sellout. They can see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice, and feel it in the absence of passion, conviction, and fire. Keir Starmer has become the embodiment of hollow leadership. All polish, no pulse. The public is no longer responding with polite letters to the editor, but with raw, thunderous chants, unfiltered, vulgar, and shocking. And that's precisely the point. When voters feel the ballot box is meaningless, when the media turns a blind eye, they raise their voices in the only way left to be heard. These chants carry more weight than any press release. The Labour Party, once proud to stand for the working class, has under Starmer transformed into a polished corporate machine, focus grouped, PR managed, and intent on avoiding offense to the same elite that has long looked down on the very people Labour needs to win over. Now those voters are pushing back. They're not waiting politely. They're shouting from the stands, telling Starmer exactly what they think of his leadership without softening a single word. This is what those chants truly mean. They say a four-letter word doesn't represent them, and their anger is palpable. They are furious that Labour caved on workers' rights, that Starmer condemned strikes instead of standing on the picket lines, and that the party has morphed into a club for London lawyers, corporate donors, and detached policy technocrats. They are furious that when nurses, rail workers, and postal staff stood up for basic dignity, Starmer told them to sit down and behave. The man who once promised to unite the party, restore trust, and make Labour electable again has instead become exactly what voters despise most, a cardboard cutout politician, cold, robotic, timid, always checking the polls, but never leading the people. And while he smiles for the cameras, delivering carefully rehearsed lines about growth and stability, he fails to grasp the thing that matters most: genuine connection, emotional resonance, human understanding, and the courage to stand and bleed alongside the people when they are hurting. Hurting, but Starmer doesn't bleed. He calculates, triangulates, plays politics like a chessboard, while ordinary people in the stands are being crushed by real-life problems: rising bills, crime, mass migration, cultural alienation, and the suffocating sense that nobody in power cares anymore. That's why the chant matters. It's the raw, unfiltered voice of the people boiling over. And it's not confined to one club or one region. It's spreading because the anger behind it is spreading. Starmer doesn't inspire loyalty, hope, or pride-only indifference at best, contempt at worst. The chant is both a release valve and a warning. People are sick of being managed. They want to be led. But Starmer isn't leading, he's talking at people, not with them, offering vague promises about a better future while abandoning the principles that once defined the labor movement. He's cozying up to global capital while ignoring the national soul. And every attempt to silence the chant through media blackouts, edited broadcasts, and outraged condemnations has only made the anger grow louder. The harder they try to shut it down, the more obvious it becomes. They're not just ignoring the message, they're afraid of it. Starmer's inner circle can't understand why it stings so deeply. To them, it's just bad optics. But it's not optics, it's truth. It's the brutal verdict of a public that's had enough. It isn't polite, but it's real. It isn't polished, but it's honest. It's what happens when politics stops listening and people stop caring about decorum. And make no mistake, this chant isn't just about labor. It's about the entire political establishment, the managerial class that speaks in platitudes, the endless careerists who treat public service like a personal brand. The campaign has worn thin, and voters have had enough of being told what to think, of hearing promises that are never fulfilled, of watching leaders behave like human spreadsheets. People are hungry for something real, even if it's messy or controversial. They want leaders who won't flinch when the going gets tough, who will face hard conversations instead of running from them, who will welcome dissent instead of silencing it. Starmer's response, however, has been silence, discomfort, denial, a sneer here, a dismissal there, but never recognition, never ownership, never fire. And that is why the chant continues. In every stadium, pub, housing estate, and corner shop, people are watching, waiting for proof that politics can still mean something, that it can still be brave. Starmer had that chance, and he squandered it, mistaking quiet for respect, fear for discipline, obedience for unity. Now his name echoes across football grounds, not as a rallying cry for hope, but as a curse, a punchline, a raised middle finger from those who once gave labor its soul. When the next election comes, those voices won't be confined to the stands, they'll be at the polls. And unless labor rediscovers its soul quickly, that infamous chant may be the least of its problems. The working class has found its voice again, and it's not whispering. It's shouting, loud, raw, and unfiltered, not through union representatives or party conferences, but through football terraces, street protests, and viral clips that bypass every layer of labor's sanitized messaging. Starmer has tried to present himself as a calm, respectable alternative to Tory chaos, but in doing so, he has built a wall, one that separates him from the very people labor was created to fight for. That chant, brutal though it may be, is the sound of that wall cracking. It's like a battering ram crashing through what once was a movement with heart, fire, and soul. Under Starmer, labor has become an empty shell, no longer the party of miners, nurses, builders, and factory workers. But the political arm of the HR department's sterile, cautious, endlessly issuing statements that say nothing yet cost everything. He stripped it of anything remotely working class or emotionally resonant, leaving behind a cold, robotic, gray-suited emptiness. Fans chanting Starmer with an asterisk aren't just mocking a politician. They're naming the feeling he leaves behind, that chilling sense he's never lifted a toolbox, pulled a night shift, or worried about rent, that his version of leadership is nodding politely while the world burns. This is a Labor Party that would rather sit through a corporate diversity seminar than stand with workers on a picket line. That feeling? It's rage, abandonment, and betrayal. Starmer has built a career on broken promises, vowing to defend freedom of movement, then dropping it, to abolish tuition fees, then scrapping it, to back striking workers, then telling MPs to stay away from picket lines, to renationalize key industries, then quietly erasing the pledge. Every principle he campaigned on was tossed aside once he had the leadership, and people noticed. That's why the chant hits so hard. It's not media spin, but grassroots backlash. Raw, unfiltered democracy. Voters don't need perfection or polished rhetoric. They need someone who truly sees and hears them. He fights for them, even if it means offending someone in a BBC green room or risking a headline in The Guardian. But Starmer? He's allergic to risk. Obsessed with optics, terrified of appearing unprofessional, as if passion itself were some kind of liability. So he sticks to the script, and each time he does, he drifts further from the working-class majority he claims to represent. Meanwhile, those chanting his name in rage aren't polished or polite, but they are real. They're electricians, scaffolders, delivery drivers, and shift workers who have had enough. Of leaders that talk down to them, smile for the cameras, then chase approval in Davos, treating politics like an endless HR review instead of the life-or-death struggle it is. Under Starmer, Labor has stopped talking with the people and started talking at them. And it shows in the party's response to crisis. Rising knife crime meets calls for more community engagement. Soaring immigration is met with appeals for compassionate dialogue, and thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters blocking roads are addressed with a mumbled script designed to avoid offending either side. It's cowardice, plain and simple, and it has left a vacuum now filled by these chants. Labor's answer? Try to censor them, cut them from broadcasts, pretend they didn't happen, pretend the anger doesn't exist. But the more they suppress it, the louder it grows. Because here's the irony. Every attempt to control the narrative only proves the narrative. Right. People aren't watching their language anymore because they've stopped believing their leaders are listening. They don't want scripted apologies or carefully worded press releases. They want truth, they want fire, and they want it now. People want a leader who will break the rules for them, not enforce them against them. A leader who speaks with genuine care, not one who sounds like they're reading legal jargon at a disciplinary hearing. And the frustration isn't coming from the far-right fringe. It's coming from Labor's own heartland. These are voters who grew up with red posters in their windows, whose families backed Labor through wars, recessions, and scandals. They remember when the party stood for something, when a Labor leader could walk into a pub, talk to anyone, and feel like they belonged. Today, when Starmer walks into that same pub, the room falls silent because people can tell he's not one of them. The crude chant that follows may lack polish, but it's more honest than anything he's offered since taking the reins. It's the raw verdict of a nation that feels patronized, abandoned, and lied to. If Starmer thinks he can ignore it, it will fade as Labor drifts toward number 10 with a glossy centrist agenda. He's dreaming. That chant is only the beginning, a surface ripple of a deeper revolt. If Labor doesn't wake up, that ripple will swell into a political tsunami. Reform UK is gaining momentum, independent voices are multiplying, and disillusionment is hardening into determination. The chant has become a rallying cry that's spreading beyond football terraces, beyond social media, beyond politics. It's turning into a cultural symbol, a warning that people are done being polite, done being passive. And Starmer is the target, not for who he is, but for what he represents. Managed decline, controlled opposition, neutered leadership, and a Labour Party that's forgotten how to fight. What people want isn't complicated. They want someone who will stand with them and fight for them. People want a country with secure borders and a police force that protects them, with jobs that pay enough to live on, schools that uphold their values, and leaders who speak like real human beings with genuine conviction, not corporate lawyers, muttering focus-grouped platitudes about fairness and growth. The chant echoing from the stands isn't just vulgarity. It's a referendum, a gut-level scream from the soul of the nation. And Labour should be paying attention, because the next chant might not be in a stadium, it might be in the voting booth. By then, it will be too late. Once you lose the voice of the people, you don't win it back with an apology, a rebrand, or a handful of policy pamphlets. Stadiums are more than sports venues. They're where culture lives, where working-class Britain breathes. And right now, that culture is chanting Keir Starmer's name, not in praise, but in fury. What he doesn't seem to grasp, and what Labour HQ fears to admit, is that once the streets and stadiums start to speak, you're no longer dealing with politics as usual. You're facing cultural rejection, an instinctive emotional refusal to buy what you're selling. No press release or panel defense can shove that genie back in the bottle. The chant isn't about rudeness, it's about reality. It's the public telling a tone-deaf establishment, "We're done playing your game. You ignored us. You betrayed us. And now we're speaking the only language you can't spin." It's visceral, raw, and authentic, which is exactly why it terrifies Starmer's operation. Because authenticity is his Achilles heel, and everything about his leadership feels manufactured. He delivers his speeches like he's reading from a script, polished but hollow. You can hear it in his interviews, too. Over-rehearsed, risk-averse, constantly trying to straddle three-party policy. Lines at once without ruffling elite feathers. He doesn't connect or click, he performs. And voters can tell the difference. They may not hold political science degrees, but they know when someone's faking it, when words are recited instead of believed. Starmer doesn't radiate conviction, only the drive to win. But win for what? To manage Britain's decline more competently than the Tories? To repackage austerity with softer language? To smile blandly, while sidestepping issues like mass migration, rising crime, and the erosion of national identity? Under his Labour, it feels like a better-managed surrender of gray, corporate acceptance of the status quo, dressed up as grown-up politics. But the working class never asked for that. They want loyalty, someone who will fight for them, risk for them, lead with them, and above all listen. And Starmer doesn't listen. He commissions reports, runs focus groups, and consults committees, but he doesn't hear the heartbeat of the nation, the voices in the pubs, the stadiums, the housing estates, the school runs, the council flats, the job centers. He's not one of them, and worse, he doesn't want to be. He's a man more at ease addressing the CBI than speaking at a union rally, more comfortable in a Davos roundtable than a working men's club. And it shows in the policies Labour won't touch, in the questions he dodges, in the cold, scripted silences he gives whenever something culturally or politically inconvenient arises. Whenever something emotionally significant shakes the country, his response feels hollow. When the Queen passed away, he spoke like a man reading from a manual. When survivors of grooming gangs sought justice, he sidestepped them. When football fans voiced their outrage in blunt, four-letter clarity, he acted as if he hadn't heard a thing. But the people are hearing each other, loud, raw, and unfiltered. The chant echoing across the nation is no longer just an insult. It's a message, a cultural pulse check, a collective middle finger aimed at managed decline, controlled opposition, and politicians who treat passion as a threat. Starmer, polished, groomed, and shaped by elite institutions and bureaucratic corridors, has become the target of a new kind of politics, bottom-up, emotional, and unapologetically direct. Labor's reaction has been pure panic. They fear the chant because it shows they've lost control of the narrative. They no longer set the boundaries of acceptable speech, the limits of frustration, or the vocabulary of protest. The chant slips past all of that. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't seek approval. It's a demand for change by any means available. The working class is stirring, and Starmer isn't just losing their votes. He's losing their respect, their trust, and perhaps their country. And that truth, far more than any chant, should haunt him.